Last time we started on this, which is the second part of the ninth principle, and we spoke about lo tehei Torah acheres, there won't be another Torah, and we said that this was actually coming to sort of repudiate the claim made by other nations, which is, or other religions, I should say, which is that the Torah was somehow replaced. So the Rambam writes very clearly, specifically in this principle, in the ninth principle, that there's not going to be another Torah. Okay? Now let's continue, page 197. Irrevocably chosen. Let's consider the claim espoused by other religions that we've somehow been demoted from the chosen status that the Torah affords us, right? Which is like a funny thing, by the way. Just even if you just think about it for a second, it's like always like God chose us, and then you went, "Oh, I've changed my mind now." You know, like what? Right? It's really, as a Jewish person, is a little bit kind of odd to suggest such a thing. But let's see. Hashem selected the Jewish nation as His children. Was this limited to a specific situation? Is the special status dependent upon our doing His will properly? Right? Meaning, maybe you would say that Hashem actually only chose us because we're behaving ourselves. When we don't behave ourselves, then we're no longer His nation. We're no longer the chosen people. Maybe you could say that. The Torah provides us with a clear answer. Amid a detailed listing of the horrific suffering Klal Yisrael will endure when they turn away from Hashem, this is at the end of B'chuk Kosai, one of the periods we read in Shul, we do it, the episodes we read quite quietly. It's called the Tochacha, which means the rebuke, and it contains lots of bad things that are going to happen to the Jewish people. And in the middle of all of that, the Torah gives this reassurance: Lo ma'astim v'lo ga'altim. I will not be revolted by them, nor will I reject them. Lechalosam, or allow them to be obliterated. Lahafer brisi itam, to annul my covenant with them. Which means even in the time, the part of the Torah when it says this is what's going to happen if you're all doing the wrong thing and you're going to exile and you'll have wars and it'll be terrible and terrible things will happen. It says with all of that, Hashem says, I'm not going to give up on you. I'm never going to reject you, and I'm not going to break this promise that you are going to be my nation. That's in the Torah. Pasuk clearly stated in the Torah. The same point is expressed by the Nevi'im, by the prophets. See, for instance, Malachi 3:6, okay, which is the last book of the prophets, about the last book in the book of Nevi'im, which ends off with speaking about Mashiach. And the prophet, therefore, Malachi is, if you like, the last of all of the prophecies, which is sort of to carry us through all of this time until we get to Mashiach. And again, he states there, once again, that Hashem is not going to choose another nation, Hashem is not going to abandon us. This is reiterated emphatically in Igeres Teiman, the Rambam's epic letter to the bewildered communities of Yemen. Anyone know some Yemenite Jews? Mark, you probably do. Okay, yeah. Mark's wife Maytal, from a Yemenite family originally. So the Jews of Yemen, they were people who were really kind of quite isolated from the rest of the Jewish people. And the Rambam was the one who writes the letter to them. And with the letter to them, he reassures them that, firstly, what they're doing is okay. And it's a discussion there about whether they are allowed to, there's someone at the door, sorry, at the pain of death, whether they're allowed to pretend that they're Christian. That's one of the things that he, or Islam, sorry, Muslim. And the other thing is that he talks to them about the fact that Mashiach is going to come, that despite the difficulties they're having at that time at the hand of the Muslims, he discusses the fact that Mashiach is going to come. What's amazing, by the way, is that because the Rambam sort of adopted the Yemenite community, meaning he was the one sage that they had contact with, really through the writing of letters, there are Yemenite Jews that until today, they follow the opinion of the Rambam on everything. Which means even in a case where the rest of us won't follow the Rambam's opinion because the Rambam is a minority opinion, nevertheless, the Yemenite Jews, not all of the Yemenite Jews, I believe there's different, types or shades within the Yemenite community, that some of them will follow the Rambam Maimonides' opinion because they had such a close connection, because he was, if you like, he was the one that accompanied them through that time when they were really, truly isolated. One of the miracles, by the way, that, when you go to Israel, I pointed this out to my son when we were there the other week, is you go there, to Jerusalem, and you see every type of Jew. It's just amazing, from the Ethiopian Jews to the Yemenite Jews to the European Jews to the American Jews. Every single type of Jew is represented there, And I said to him, there's no other place like this in the world, because this is the place which is the center. It's like the peak of the mountain, and everyone is represented here. It's a beautiful thing to see. And you think about that community in Yemen, which for hundreds, if not thousands, of years, was there and was pretty much isolated from the rest of the Jewish people. And now they're back. They're back together with us, if you like, and they're part of the Jewish community. So that was the Rambam in his letter to them, where he's reassuring them that we're still the Jewish people, we're still together. I'm reassuring you as a sage that it's okay and that Mashiach is going to come and you have to hang on. They did, and they hang on. They were hanging on until they got to return to Israel after the establishment of the state. We were chosen for all eternity, he continues, come what may. Since the Torah is applicable to every time, place, and situation the world will ever experience, and the Torah itself proclaims our eternal chosen status, it is impossible for the Jewish people to ever be removed from this pedestal. Meaning, once something is written in the Torah, then it's eternal, then it's forever. The Torah's proclamation of our eternal status is a statement of Hashem's personal position. His opinion does not change. Whether we are up or down, on the right or the wrong path, we are his children forever. And that's critical. That's critical. And every single Jewish person has known that, which is why they rejected Christianity's claim outright, rejected Islam's claim outright from the start. He continues, can a Navi change the halacha? Page 198, which means now we're discussing, if we spoke about the fact that the Torah is not going to be replaced, will there be any parts that can be changed? What about a prophet? Prophet is someone who's so great, has this close connection to Hashem. Would they be able to alter something from the Torah? He continues, a Navi has no halachic jurisdiction whatsoever. He cannot use his powers of nevuah, of prophecy, to determine for us which laws, halachas, are binding or correct, to adjudicate monetary cases, or to rule what is permitted or prohibited. A fascinating thing. If the prophet turns up in court and he says, I can see with Ruach HaKodesh, with a holy kind of spirit, that Hashem has bestowed upon me, I see that you owe him money. I see that they did the damage. We do not take that opinion into account. Their opinion is ignored, is struck off the record, because it's got to be judged by us down here. There are ways we can use witnesses, etc. There is evidence, but the judges have to judge based upon the evidence that comes from here. And that's the way that Torah works. So the prophet is not allowed to adjudicate a case because of prophecy. He's not allowed to come along and tell us that something is permitted or prohibited based upon prophecy. Although the Jewish people turn to Nevi'im prophets for guidance in many areas, in matters of halacha, of Jewish law, nevuah confers no power. And a Navi may weigh in only by virtue of his Torah scholarship. So if the prophet is also a Torah scholar, which he would have been, then of course he can have a part, he can have a say in the dialogue, but only as a Torah scholarship, as much as he can prove what he's saying from Torah sources like everyone else. Despite his status as a prophet, his opinion is no more influential than that of any other Torah authority. And ultimately, the halacha will follow the majority opinion. The Torah provides an established system of halachic decision-making, and nobody, not even someone who possesses prophetic ability, has the power to override the system. There is one situation that we believe a Navi, a prophet, when he tells us to override halacha, to allow for an extremely limited case-specific exception to halacha, meaning for a very temporary period of time. If, for instance, a Navi, a prophet, claims that he's received a direct message from above that the prohibition of eating shellfish is no longer in effect, we pay him no heed. We don't listen to him. If, however, a qualified and proven Navi prophet says that although shellfish are absolutely forbidden by the Torah, in this specific circumstance, an exception must be made to the rule, we do listen to him. Right? Now, they're not doing this because somebody wants a night out to eat. Okay? They're going to be doing it for some sort of specific reason. The classic example, by the way, of this in Nach comes up in the Sefer Melach in the Book of Kings, when Eliyahu Hanavi challenges the prophets of Baal. These are Jewish people who are turned to idolatry, and he challenges them to a contest. And in that contest, he says to them, you try and sacrifice, and let's see if your sacrifice is accepted. Let's see if Baal, who is the idol that they worship, the sort of force or power that they worship, let's see if anything happens to your sacrifice and if it is accepted. And they try all day and all night, and they're saying incantations, they're doing whatever they can, and nothing takes place. Eliyahu Navi stands up in front of all of the people who are there watching. The Jewish people have come to watch. And this takes place on Har HaKarmel, which is in Haifa. And if you've been to the Carmel region in Haifa. And Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah, he stands up and he builds an altar, and he puts on it the sacrifice, and a fire comes down from heaven and it burns up the sacrifice. And then his point is proved. Now, it's a wonderful, beautiful story, and it leads all the people to declare Hashem Hu Elokim, the words we say at the end of Yom Kippur. God is the true God. Hashem is the true God. But it's forbidden to offer a sacrifice outside of the temple. You can't just build build an altar in your back garden and sort of beseech God to start offering, you're going to offer up your korban there. It's actually forbidden to do that, apart from the fact that the heavenly fire probably won't come down to me or you, but you're not allowed to do that. So they ask, how could he do that? How could Eliyahu do that? Such a thing, which is forbidden. And the answer is he only did it as a one-off. There was a great pressing need for the Jewish people in this case, and therefore he did it as a one-off temporary allowance that he was able to do because he was a prophet. So those type of cases, if it's for a temporary thing, then they can do. He continues, a Navi or anyone else cannot alter the Torah's rules one iota. The Torah's rules do not change. The Navi, the prophet, can convey by virtue of his prophecy that the Torah's law does not apply to this specific situation. That's all that the prophet has power to do. Technically, even creating a limited carve out constitutes a change to the law, insofar as the law was originally inclusive of all situations. The reason this is acceptable is that the Torah clearly instructs us to believe the prophet within certain parameters. As it says in Devarim, Elov Tishma'un, you should listen to him. Once the Torah gave us this instruction, his prophecy regarding a limited time, halachic exception, is not a deviation from Torah law, but rather a fulfillment of his Torah-ordained mandate, which means the Torah itself within the system builds in the fact that the prophet has jurisdiction to do this. Now he brings the example. The prototype exception is that of Eliyahu Hanavi offering a korban, a sacrifice on Mount Carmel. Even though the halacha is no korban, no sacrifice may be brought outside the Beis Hamikdash. You can't bring a sacrifice outside the temple. By the way, this is where there's an intersect between halacha and the stories. You know what I mean? When you read the story, then you think, wow, it's incredible, what an amazing story, beautiful, what a Kiddush Hashem, it's amazing, yeah? The halachic mind, my wife always tells me I've got one, which I'm proud of. The halachic mind is thinking, hang on a minute, that's not allowed. That goes against the law. This story doesn't make sense, yeah? And you can do that when you go through the Torah as well. There are many sort of instances in the Torah where one asks themselves, about these different stories. Well, hang on a minute, how does this make sense with what the Torah tells us later on from a halachic perspective? It's a fascinating thing. There are whole books which are written on the Torah, not as a commentary in the sense of what we would normally call a commentary, that you're going to sort of speak about in the drosha on Shabbos morning, but rather a halachic commentary explaining the different parts of the Torah where you've got halachic questions. Anyway, if you enjoy these things, then I can refer you to some of the material. So he continues, Eliyahu Hanavi had no power to change that halacha. He can't just change the law and say that it's completely permitted. What he was able to do by virtue of his status as a qualified and proven Navi, a prophet, was to recognize that the broader halacha was not warranted in the specific situation before him. He needed to take a drastic step to save the Jewish people who were teetering on a dangerous abyss. The correct course of action, according to the Torah, in that circumstance, was to bring his offering on Mount Carmel. So therefore, once again, you see that it was only in a specific circumstance that the Navi, that the prophet, was able to do that and to change. And that's also because it's built into the Torah system. We are going to end there. We will continue, please God, next time.